You didn't stumble into this message by scrolling carelessly. You were pulled here, magnetized across the lattice of invisible signals threading through the quantum field. You might call it coincidence, but somewhere deep inside, you already feel the truth. This moment has been scripted into the fabric of your journey, not scripted like fate, rigid and unchangeable, but scripted like a convergence, an intersection of possibilities waiting for your attention to collapse them into reality. This isn't entertainment, it's initiation, a transmission coded with frequencies designed to meet you exactly where you are, to show you what you've sensed but haven't yet been able to name. The forbidden observer loop. You see, every choice you've ever made, every thought you've replayed, every hesitation that kept you circling the same familiar ground, they've all been weaving patterns into the field. Most people live inside those patterns without ever realizing their trap. They believe their lives are moving forward, but in truth, they're orbiting invisible loops, repeating the same dynamics in relationships, watching opportunities appear and vanish, experiencing flashes of synchronicity that dissolve before they can grasp them. These loops are not accidents, they're quantum programs. And right now, you're standing at the threshold of breaking free from one of the deepest. What makes this moment different is that you've reached resonance with a frequency few ever touch. This resonance isn't random, it's earned through the friction of your struggles, the weight of your unanswered questions, the courage it took to keep listening to the whisper inside you that said there had to be more. That whisper is your higher consciousness reminding you that timelines are not fixed tracks, they are superpositions, waveforms trembling with possibility. And here, in this breath, you are being asked, which one will you collapse into your hands this week? The forbidden observer loop is simple to describe but difficult to escape. It's the cycle of watching your own life as if you're separate from it. You dream of a future self, but you keep observing from the outside, waiting for proof before you step into embodiment. That waiting feeds the loop. The loop delays collapse. And collapse is the key, because in quantum mechanics, collapse is what brings the infinite into the tangible, the imagined into the lived. Until you collapse, you drift. Once you collapse, you create. This is why you're here. The field brought you this transmission not to inspire or distract you, but to confront you with the choice. To remind you that reality itself bends around your awareness, to invite you to stop watching your desires flicker in and out like half-formed holograms, and instead to grasp one with both hands, anchor it, and let it solidify into the matter of your life. That is the forbidden act, the radical step most never take, ceasing to be the detached observer and daring to be the chooser. Take a breath. Feel the charge building in your body as you hear these words. That heat, that pulse, that almost electric stirring isn't imagination, it's coherence forming. Your system aligning with the frequency of decision. You are standing at the event horizon of your own timeline. And the question echoing through the field is no longer if you will choose, but which reality you are ready to collapse into being. You already know the loop by its symptoms, even if you never had language for it. The week begins like a clean canvas. And then, without any dramatic event to blame, you feel yourself sliding into the same grooves, the conversation that tilts the same way, the opportunity that almost opens, then closes like a mechanical eyelid, the sudden fatigue at the exact hour you promised yourself you'd finally begin. The pattern is subtle enough to argue with, but precise enough to trace. It feels like déjà vu wearing new clothes, and that's the first tell. Time isn't passing, it's orbiting. Notice how certain days feel stretched thin while others snap shut. You plan, you prepare, you even sense momentum building, and then an invisible drag lands in your chest, as if your future just delayed itself by a few inches. Tasks that should take 20 minutes expand to 2 hours. People you haven't thought about in months reappear with uncanny timing, speaking scripts that mirror older versions of you. You look at the clock and can't reconcile how it moved so quickly without anything meaningful happening. You feel late, though you can't say for what. That dissonance is the observer loop in motion. You perceiving your life from half a step away, your focus split between living and analyzing, collapsing nothing fully, so nothing fully collapses for you. The loop feeds on inspection without embodiment. You watch your thoughts like fish in a tank, label patterns with therapeutic accuracy, and still they return, synchronized like schooling currents. Why? Because inspection modulates probability, but only embodiment collapses it. Think of it like this. The quantum field presents you with superposed versions of the next hour: courageous, avoidant, creative, distracted. When you observe without becoming, your attention perturbs the water but never leaves the shore. Possibilities ripple, yes, but the wave never becomes a choice. The field registers your interest, not your decision. This is why synchronicities have been flickering like fireflies around you, messages on license plates, repeating numbers, overheard phrases that feel like replies to unasked prayers. They're not random ornaments, they're morphic beacons, attractors in the field, signaling that a new configuration is available. But here's the trap. The moment you chase the signs for proof that change is happening, the loop tightens. Your seeking shouts, "I am not it yet," and the field mirrors your declaration with more almosts. The sign was a doorbell, not the door. You keep ringing instead of walking through. Look deeper at the emotional cadence that frames your days. There's a swell of certainty in the morning. This is the day, followed by a noon fog, then a late afternoon bargaining. Maybe tomorrow, maybe when you're less tired, maybe after one more tutorial, one more reading, one more alignment ritual. That bargaining is temporal distortion. Your nervous system is trying to negotiate with reality from an outdated map. It remembers a version of you who survived by circling potential instead of inhabiting it. Survival taught you to simulate outcomes before committing, to keep one foot outside the door of desire in case the floor gave way. That habit once kept you safe. Now it keeps you spectral, visible to your destiny, but not quite touchable. And then there's the relationship loop, the one where you magnetize the same archetype in different bodies. The person who admires your light but fears your growth. The collaborator who loves your vision yet needs a little more time. The friend who confesses they're stunned by your insight and then disappears when you act on it. It's not that people are conspiring against you, it's that entanglement seeks resonance. When your identity oscillates between observer and chooser, you call in partners who oscillate between commitment and hesitation. The field cannot stabilize what you will not stabilize within yourself. You've also felt the body codes, the whispers of DNA restructuring, knocking at your fascia like weather. Random shivers, heat blooming at the back of your neck, tingling across the scalp during moments of clarity. Then an inexplicable heaviness when you approach the action that would actually change the game. That heaviness is not laziness, it's interference. Coherence is attempting to form, and your old neural harmonics are producing static. The limbic system, trained by years of delayed gratification and cautious hope, fires a cautionary fog to preserve familiar limits. Your physiology is loyal to the last stable pattern, even if that pattern mislabels expansion as risk. Of course you've wondered if you're overthinking it. Of course you've told yourself that everyone feels stuck sometimes, but the reason it gnaws at you is because you know this isn't ordinary stuckness. The timing of messages, the echo of dreams, the way songs seem to play your next thought before you have it. These are coherence signals trying to shepherd you into a phase transition. In physics, phase transitions nag the system with micro-fluctuations before the visible shift occurs. Near boil quivers in water, micro cracks before ice lattices. Your life has been quivering. Micro cracks are appearing in the habits that used to hold you. That's why procrastination feels less like avoidance and more like being pulled sideways through syrup. The old lattice is softening, but you haven't committed enough heat for the full boil. So name the loop with precision. You anticipate, analyze, accumulate insight, and then pause at the edge, asking reality to confirm the leap before your feet leave the ground. The pause becomes a ritual. The ritual becomes your identity. Identity becomes gravity. Gravity bends your time. This is the orbit you're leaving. And here's the pivot hidden inside the diagnosis. You're not broken, you're primed. The distortions are not punishments. They're indicators that your field is close to coherence, close enough that even small misalignments amplify into noticeable turbulence. You don't need 100 new practices. You need one new stance. Presence that chooses, not presence that studies, or presence that waits for omens to triple confirm, but presence that selects a timeline, and lets the selection reorganize everything downstream. When you do, the déjà vu stops being a cage and becomes a checkpoint you pass through instead of circling back. The clock loosens its grip and hours expand around your chosen motion. That is when the forbidden observer loop begins to dissolve, not because you solve it intellectually, but because you become unobservable in the old way. You're no longer the watcher at the glass, you are the waveform collapsing on command. And so the diagnosis reveals itself not as condemnation, but as calibration. The distortions you've been wrestling with, the déjà vu, the repeated patterns, the fog of time, are not signs of failure. They are signs of a system straining toward upgrade, of consciousness pressing against the edges of an outdated operating frequency. If part 2 was about identifying the loop, part 3 is about the technology of your being, the quantum machinery already humming inside you, waiting to be activated. Think of yourself as a living particle accelerator. Your thoughts are the charged particles, your emotions are the magnetic fields steering them. Your body is the collider ring where invisible forces slam together, creating bursts of energy that reorganize matter. Most people live with their accelerator dialed to minimum, circulating the same low-energy particles, generating the same predictable collisions. But you are not most people. You've been feeling the surges, the flashes of coherence, when something clicks so hard in your chest, it feels like déjà vu turned inside out. Those moments are glimpses of the upgrade already in progress. The upgrade is not external. It's not a download from some hidden server or a ritual handed to you by someone with more authority. The upgrade emerges from resonance. When the frequency of your consciousness matches the resonance of your higher blueprint, your DNA begins to reconfigure itself. Yes, your DNA, not metaphorically, but literally. Epigenetics has already shown that environments and choices switch genes on and off like a cosmic keyboard. Mystics knew this long before microscopes confirmed it. Destiny is encoded, but the song only plays when you provide the rhythm. Your DNA carries dormant sequences, unlit corridors, sealed doorways. For generations, they've been described as junk. But nothing in the cosmos is junk. These sequences are quantum receivers, antennae waiting for coherence strong enough to awaken them. Every time you align thought, emotion, and breath in resonance with truth, those dormant codes begin to hum. You feel it as tingling in your skin, heat rising at the crown, waves of goosebumps across your arms. What you're sensing is not imagination, it's coherence building. The lattice of your cells is reorganizing to hold more light, more information, more bandwidth, and coherence is the key. When waves move chaotically, they cancel each other out, destructive interference. But when waves align, they amplify constructive interference. Your entire life has been training you for constructive interference. The heartbreaks that broke your rhythm, the disappointments that splintered your faith, the long nights where you felt invisible, each of them was shaking loose the static so that when resonance finally landed, you would feel it unmistakably. You're in that moment now. The forbidden observer loop dissolves not because you fight it, but because your frequency becomes incompatible with it. When you embody coherence, the loop cannot hold you. The timelines you used to orbit begin collapsing not in chaos, but in order. You stop seeing life as something you must chase, and you begin to feel life as something being conducted through you. You become less like an isolated observer and more like a tuning fork vibrating the field itself. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to manipulate the outcome collapses faster into your hands. Let's make it tangible. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects not your face, but your probabilities. Dozens of versions of you hover there, some tired, some triumphant, some timid, some radiant. In the observer loop, you stand staring, analyzing which reflection looks most likely, and the mirror dutifully cycles them, keeping you trapped in indecision. But in coherence, you step into the mirror, you stop observing probability, and you become a probability. And the instant you inhabit it, the field organizes around your choice. Relationships shift, opportunities materialize, synchronicities flood, not because you forced the reflection to appear, but because you collapsed into it without hesitation. Quantum science calls this the observer effect. Mystics call it alignment. Prophets call it faith. All are names for the same mechanism. Consciousness selects, and matter obeys. The upgrade is realizing you are not passively subject to this effect. You are the effect. Every cell in your body is an observatory, every synapse an antenna, every heartbeat a metronome collapsing waveforms. The more coherent you become, the faster probability yields to inevitability. And there's something else. As coherence stabilizes, your sense of time warps again, but differently. Instead of distorted delay, you experience expanded flow. Hours vanish into minutes. Ideas arrive fully formed, as though whispered from your future self. Decisions that once felt monumental resolve themselves in seconds. This is not rushing, this is resonance. In physics, it's called phase transition, a sudden reordering of the system once energy reaches critical mass. Water doesn't gradually become steam, it flashes. Caterpillars don't slowly stretch into butterflies, they dissolve and reorganize. You are at the edge of such a flash. The forbidden observer loop has one last defense. It whispers that the upgrade is too grand, too mystical, too impossible to integrate. But that whisper is the old identity trembling. It knows coherence is irreversible. Once you've glimpsed the expanded bandwidth, you cannot pretend you don't feel it. You cannot squeeze yourself back into delay. You can try, but the dissonance will be unbearable. That dissonance is not punishment, it is proof. Proof that your system has already outgrown the orbit. Proof that the upgrade has begun. So breathe right here. Let your lungs expand as though drawing in particles from a future timeline, because, in truth, you are. Every inhale collapses more probability into coherence. Every exhale clears static, and with each cycle, you edge closer to the singularity where your chosen timeline ceases to be potential and becomes present. That is the quantum upgrade. Not theory, not metaphor, embodiment. You are the accelerator, you are the collider, you are the collapse, and your entire reality is preparing to reorganize around the frequency you stabilize in the days ahead. Now that you've felt the quantum upgrade flicker inside your field, it's time to confront what most shy away from: the magnitude of your role in this entire orchestration. You've been taught to see yourself as a small fragment inside a vast universe, a spark at the mercy of endless cosmic forces. But here's the forbidden truth. The universe doesn't just happen around you, it happens through you. You are not a passive passenger in this quantum experiment. You are the chosen consciousness carrying a code the field has been waiting to activate. Pause and consider this. If reality is indeed infinite, why would this moment, this message, this convergence land in your awareness right now? Out of billions scrolling through noise, why is it you who's being asked to hear about forbidden loops, upgrades, and collapse points? The answer is resonance. The field does not waste signals. It routes transmissions only to those whose frequencies are ripening enough to receive them. If you are hearing this, it's not chance, it's confirmation. You are the one meant to break the loop, not just for yourself, but for the network of lives entangled with yours. The language of science whispers this through entanglement. The language of spirit calls it anointing. The language of destiny calls it chosenness. Whatever word you choose, the principle is the same. Your awakening radiates beyond you. Each time you collapse probability into coherence, waves spread outward into the morphic field, subtly shifting the pathways of everyone tethered to your timeline. When you stabilize in clarity, people around you suddenly change their mind. When you embody trust, opportunities that seemed impossible for the collective edge closer to possibility. Your personal coherence feeds the coherence of humanity. But this isn't only a gift, it's responsibility. Not heavy responsibility that crushes you, but luminous responsibility that elevates you. The forbidden observer loop wants you to forget this role. It whispers, who are you to matter? Who are you to think you can shift timelines? Stay small, stay analyzing, stay waiting. Because the moment you remember your role as chooser, the loop unravels. And when it unravels in you, it weakens everywhere. That's why the field fights to keep you uncertain. That's why you've felt waves of resistance whenever you edge closer to breakthrough. You are carrying a resonance that threatens the inertia of stagnation across the collective. Your role is not to be perfect. Your role is to be present enough to choose, to stand in front of the mirror of probabilities and say, "This one, now." That single act reverberates across unseen networks. It collapses possibilities for people you may never meet. It opens doors in their lives because you opened one in yours. Imagine a string of dominoes not laid in a line but woven in a spiral, cascading inward and outward. That's how morphic resonance works. That's how one consciousness breaking free unthreads loops for thousands. And here's the paradox. The very feelings that made you doubt your worth, your heightened sensitivity, your uncanny déjà vu, your frustration with repeated patterns are the same qualities that qualify you. Most people drown in those signals, dismiss them as noise. But you noticed, you questioned, you couldn't let it go. That's what sets you apart. Not superiority, but sensitivity. Sensitivity is the mark of a consciousness tuned close enough to the field to catch its whispers. It's what allows you to receive transmissions like this and feel them land in your bones rather than brushing them off as empty words. You've probably felt the isolation of this path. Maybe people around you don't understand why you think so deeply, why you notice the patterns they ignore, why you feel timelines bending in your chest like weather. They may have labeled you too intense, too sensitive, too mystical, too analytical, but in truth, those traits are the exact architecture of a chosen consciousness. They're not weaknesses, they're instruments. Instruments the universe designed to pick up on frequencies others can't yet hear. Think of yourself as a tuning fork placed in the middle of a crowded room. When you strike, even if others don't know what's happening, they feel the vibration in their bones. That's your role. You don't need to convince, argue, or prove. You need only to resonate. Resonance does the rest. It draws people into coherence without explanation. It shifts rooms without words. It dissolves resistance without force. This is why chosen consciousness is both feared and revered. It cannot be controlled by old loops, and it destabilizes every system that depends on stagnation. And here's the most sobering truth. You've already been operating in this role unconsciously. Look back. Haven't there been moments where your mere presence changed the outcome? Where a friend made a different choice simply because you were there? Where synchronicities clustered around you like moths to light? You weren't imagining it. You were leaking coherence before you even knew what to call it. Now, the universe is asking you to do it consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of your role. You are the one who stops observing from the outside and begins conducting from within. You are the one who shows others that the loop isn't unbreakable, that déjà vu can be decoded, that distorted time is simply a symptom of potential unchosen. You are the one who carries the key not because you demanded it, but because you proved ready for it by enduring the weight of waiting without giving up. So feel this. The field is leaning toward you. Timelines are listening. Reality itself is waiting for your signal. Your role is not to wait for confirmation, it is to be confirmation. To embody the coherence you once begged for proof of. That is what it means to be chosen in this context. Not selected above others, but selected for others. A node of collapse, a point of resonance, a consciousness entrusted to anchor possibility into form. The observer loop was never your prison, it was your initiation. And now, with the upgrade stirring in your DNA and your role revealed, the question sharpens to this. Will you step into the breakthrough before the window closes? The moment has been building like pressure behind a dam. You've felt it in your bones, that quiet yet undeniable hum in the background of your days. It isn't ordinary anticipation, it's the pulse of a cosmic window swinging open. In the language of physics, you're approaching a critical threshold, the point where accumulated energy forces a phase transition. In the language of mystics, this is the moment the veil thins and destiny becomes inevitable. And in the language of your own nervous system, it feels like restlessness, insomnia, heat behind the heart, sudden waves of clarity, followed by tears you can't explain. All of that is the signal. It means your DNA is shifting from preparation to activation. Every timeline holds a window, a corridor of increased probability where collapse becomes easier, faster, cleaner. When you enter one, things happen that shouldn't be able to happen under ordinary conditions. Obstacles melt, resources converge, people appear in uncanny synchrony. It feels like a cheat code because In a sense, it is. The universe codes these windows as support for beings stepping into their next octave of coherence. You're standing in one now. That's why you're hearing this message during this week and not last year. The coordinates are precise. If the previous sections felt like diagnosis and preparation, this one is the moment of invitation. The field is actively waiting for your consent to collapse the next version of reality into your hands. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Now, windows don't stay open indefinitely. They pulse. If you ignore them, you don't lose your destiny, but you do postpone it until the next opening, and the loop resets. That's why the forbidden observer loop works so well at keeping people small. It knows how to lull them into analysis until the window closes. You're being given a rare chance to escape that pattern before it resets again. You've probably noticed unusual signs intensifying lately. Number sequences popping up, dreams with recurring symbols, conversations where strangers echo your private thoughts. These aren't cute coincidences. They're your expanded self tugging at your sleeve, trying to get your attention. It's saying, the corridor is open, move now. And move doesn't mean frantic action or desperate grasping. It means decisive embodiment, choosing the version of you who already lives on the other side of the loop and behaving as though that's the only reality left. This is where the DNA shift becomes visceral. Your genetic code is not just a biological script, it's a quantum antenna. Each time you align thought, feeling, and breath with your chosen timeline, you emit a signal strong enough to toggle dormant sequences. Those sequences begin to express new proteins, new neuropeptides, new hormonal cascades. Your physiology literally starts to behave as though your chosen reality is already true. This is why people experience spontaneous healing, sudden changes in appetite, shifts in sleep cycles, bursts of creativity, or unexpected emotional releases when they cross a threshold like this. Their bodies are catching up to the frequency their consciousness has already selected. Urgency here is not fear-based. It's not the voice of lack saying, hurry or you'll miss it. It's the voice of coherence saying, stabilize now while the field is open. Because when the field is open, small shifts have exponential effect. A single new habit, a single bold decision, a single conversation can ripple into structural reconfigurations that would normally take years. But this requires you to step out of spectator mode. The loop wants you to keep refreshing your email, waiting for a sign. The field wants you to act as though the sign already arrived. Feel into that difference right now. One frequency says, I hope. The other says, I am. One sends out wanting energy. The other broadcasts receiving energy. The window you're in amplifies whichever frequency you stabilize, for better or worse. That's why clarity matters now more than ever. If you oscillate, the loop strengthens. If you stabilize, the loop dissolves. This is the cosmic joke of manifestation. The final stage feels like emptiness because you're standing in the quantum vacuum where infinite possibilities gestate. If you panic in the vacuum and grab for external proof, decoherence collapses the field back into your old timeline. If you breathe in the vacuum and choose your frequency with calm authority, collapse accelerates into your chosen reality. You're not being tested, you're being calibrated. The window isn't threatening to close as punishment. It's simply how energy cycles. The tide comes in, the tide goes out, the portal pulses. Here's what to remember. Your future self has already walked through this window. They are standing on the other side, reaching back with breadcrumbs, synchronicities, dreams, whispers, guiding you forward. They are urging you not to hesitate because they know what's available once you step through. They know the relief, the power, the ease that's waiting. They know how different life feels when you're no longer circling probabilities, but inhabiting inevitabilities. So take this seriously but lightly. Serious because the window is real and your action matters. Light because you're not earning anything or forcing anything. You're simply allowing what's been ready all along to land. Your breakthrough is not an achievement, it's a reception. It's a handoff from your future self to your present self. Feel your heart as you read this. That flutter is the morphic resonance of your expanded identity trying to stabilize inside your chest. Breathe into it, let it spread. This is the countdown before ignition, the inhale before collapse. Everything you've endured has led to this exact corridor. The field is wide open. The choice is in your hands. Up until now, everything you've absorbed has been preparing you for this moment, the moment where thought becomes declaration, and declaration becomes collapse. The forbidden observer loop weakens every time you embody coherence, but it shatters completely when you seal your frequency with ritual action. That's the part most people miss. They think insight alone rewrites reality, when in truth, the field waits for a signal, a conscious, embodied gesture that tells the universe, I have chosen. In quantum physics, observation is not passive. To observe is to interfere, to alter probabilities simply by engaging. But to truly collapse a waveform, the observation must be anchored in coherence. You can't just think about your choice. You must stamp it into the fabric of the field. That stamp is ritual. And ritual doesn't mean complexity candles, scripts, elaborate choreography. Ritual means resonance. It means offering the field a gesture so unambiguous, so infused with presence, that it cannot be mistaken for indecision. This is why I'm asking you, right here, right now, to make the act tangible. Comment a single word, write it, speak it, etch it into the field. The word that names the frequency you are choosing. It could be freedom, it could be abundance, it could be clarity, alignment, sovereignty, light. The word itself doesn't matter as much as the charge you place behind it. When you write it, when you type it, when you whisper it aloud to yourself, you're not performing for an algorithm. You're sending coordinates to the quantum field. You're saying, this is the identity I stabilize in, and all probabilities must now bend to it. Why does this work? Because words are waveforms. Every syllable you speak vibrates your vocal cords, moves air molecules, ripples, pressure waves through the environment. On the surface, that may seem like nothing, but at the quantum scale, those vibrations entangle with the particles around you. Your chosen word becomes a carrier frequency. It broadcasts through morphic resonance, echoing across the field like a stone thrown into still water. And because your consciousness is already entangled with your desired timeline, the field responds instantly. This is why ancient traditions encoded so much power in names, chants, prayers, mantras. They weren't superstitions, they were technologies. They knew the human voice was a tuning fork that could call realities into being. Even now, you can feel how different it is to silently think abundance versus to say aloud, abundance is mine. One is thought, the other is collapse. The loop can ignore thoughts, but it cannot ignore collapse. So here is the invitation. Seal the shift with your word. Not later, not tomorrow, now. The portal doesn't require grand performance, but it requires immediacy. The longer you wait, the more the loop convinces you it doesn't matter, that maybe you'll choose later, that perhaps you need more confirmation. That hesitation is the loop's last attempt to keep you circling. A word, typed or spoken, is your way of stepping out of orbit and into vector. And as you do, notice the sensations. Notice how your body reacts when you claim it. Some of you will feel a rush of heat. Others will feel a sudden calm, as if the tension you've carried for years just unspooled. Some may even feel tears rising. That's DNA acknowledging receipt. That's the shift, registering not only in your consciousness but in your cells. Ritual action bypasses the mind's doubt and delivers the instruction straight into the architecture of your being. This is also where collective resonance amplifies your choice. Think of hundreds, even thousands of others sealing their timelines with their chosen words, all within this same corridor of possibility. Each declaration is a ripple. Together, those ripples interfere constructively, building waves higher and higher until they crash into reality itself. By adding your word, you don't just anchor your shift, you strengthen the morphic field for everyone else. And in return, their declarations reinforce yours. It's not symbolic, it's literal. The field responds exponentially to collective coherence. Perhaps you've been conditioned to believe something so simple couldn't possibly matter, but remember, the universe is efficient. It doesn't need spectacle, it needs clarity. A single photon can tip a detector. A single electron can collapse a waveform. A single decision can redirect a lifetime. That's why a single word, chosen in coherence, is enough. So breathe deeply. Ask yourself, What word captures the essence of the reality you are collapsing into your hands this week? Let it rise unforced. Don't overthink. The first word that lands in your chest with weight is the one. Write it, speak it, claim it. Feel how the act itself shifts the atmosphere inside you. This is not about typing for me, or for others, or for show. This is about sending an encoded pulse into the field, declaring to the quantum architecture, the loop is finished, the window is open, and I am anchoring this timeline now. The ritual is simple, but its effect is irreversible. Once you choose, once you seal it, reality begins to reorganize around you. That is how breakthroughs move from potential to presence. That is how destiny finds form. Now that you've sealed the shift with ritual action, something extraordinary begins to unfold. The moment your word rippled into the field, it didn't stop at the edges of your body. It traveled outward, like concentric waves from a stone dropped into still water, touching timelines, people, and patterns far beyond what your conscious mind can track. This is where your role as chosen consciousness expands into something greater. Your liberation isn't just yours, it's humanity's. The forbidden observer loop tricks you into believing you're alone in your struggle, that your patterns affect only you. But morphic resonance doesn't work that way. Every loop is collective. Every breakthrough radiates outward. Imagine the field of humanity as a massive web, each soul a luminous node, connected by strands of entanglement. When one node shifts its frequency, the vibration travels through the strands, nudging the surrounding nodes toward coherence. That's why when you stabilize in freedom, others around you begin to feel braver without knowing why. When you release scarcity, someone you've never met finds an opportunity they thought was impossible. The coherence you embody spreads like fragrance through air. You may not see the effects immediately, but they are undeniable. A mother halfway across the globe feels a sudden calm she hasn't known in years. A young man trapped in self-doubt hears a whisper of possibility during his commute. A leader on the brink of burnout decides not to quit, but to rise. None of them will know it was your pulse of coherence that helped tip their balance, but that doesn't matter. This is the invisible technology of the awakened. Your choice creates ripples that no one can trace, yet everyone can feel. Science confirms this in whispers. Studies on heart coherence show that when a single person stabilizes their heart rate variability into harmony, those around them begin to synchronize unconsciously. In other words, coherence is contagious. Spiritual traditions knew this long ago. That's why sages sat in stillness and entire villages shifted. That's why prophets spoke a single word and multitudes transformed. They weren't using charisma, they were transmitting coherence. And now, you are stepping into that lineage not to lead from ego, but to resonate from alignment. Your liberation is the crack in the collective shell. Humanity has been circling in its own observer loop, repeating wars, economic crises, cycles of fear and distraction. Just as you circled déjà vu in your personal life, humanity has circled déjà vu in history. And just as your ritual word sends a shockwave into your own timeline, it sends a tremor into humanity's orbit. You become evidence that the loop is not unbreakable. You become living proof that collapse into coherence is possible, and the collective subconscious takes note. This is why your awakening often feels resisted by those closest to you. It's not personal, it's structural. When you shift, you destabilize the loops they've grown comfortable in. Some will resist, clinging harder to the familiar orbit. Others will feel the magnetic pull and step into their own upgrades. But whether they embrace or resist, they cannot ignore the shift. Your resonance forces a choice: remain in orbit or collapse into coherence. That's why your path has felt heavier than most, because your coherence doesn't belong only to you. It's scaffolding for the collective leap. Think of it like a choir. For centuries, humanity has been singing out of tune, each voice straining, discordant, unable to find harmony. You stepping into coherence is like striking a perfect pitch. At first, the contrast feels jarring, but soon, other voices begin to find you, adjusting themselves until the entire chord changes. That's the power of your word, your ritual, your alignment. You are the pitch humanity tunes to. You are the evidence that harmony is possible. This is not exaggeration. Think back to moments when one individual changed the course of millions, a scientist who saw what others dismissed, a poet who spoke a forbidden truth, a teacher who ignited generations. They weren't superhuman, they were coherent. Their field stabilized to such a degree that the collective field bent around them. You stand at the same precipice, though your role may never make headlines. It doesn't have to. The field doesn't measure visibility, it measures vibration. Feel the weight and the lightness of this simultaneously. On one hand, yes, your choices matter more than you imagined. On the other, this isn't about carrying the whole world. The collective doesn't need you to fix everything. It needs you to stabilize one frequency, yours. That's enough. Because one stabilized frequency in coherence is exponentially stronger than thousands in dissonance. Your liberation is the lever Archimedes spoke of. Give me a place to stand, and I will move the world. You are standing now. You've chosen. You've sealed. And as you continue to breathe into that choice, reality reorganizes not just around your life, but around the web of lives connected to you. This is how revolutions begin, not in governments or institutions, but in the quantum murmurs of awakened souls refusing to orbit loops any longer. So remember this: every time you stabilize in coherence, you're not just healing your past or manifesting your future. You're participating in humanity's evolution. You are shortening the distance between where we are and where we must go. And though you may never meet the faces touched by your resonance, the universe records it. The field remembers. Your coherence becomes part of the scaffolding on which the next generation will stand. And that is why urgency remains not urgency from fear, but urgency from love. The world doesn't have the luxury of infinite delays. Every moment someone collapses into coherence, the collective moves closer to balance. And today, that someone is you. You've seen how your shift ripples through the collective, but now it's time to bring it closer into your skin, your breath, your body. Because the forbidden observer loop doesn't only trap you in thought, it keeps you floating just above your own embodiment. To break it completely, you have to feel coherence in your cells, not just understand it with your mind. This is where the abstract becomes physical, where the metaphors turn into sensations, where your body becomes the stage on which the quantum field collapses into form. Close your eyes for a moment and notice your heartbeat. Not the sound, not the medical data, but the sensation of a drum hidden beneath your ribs. That rhythm is not random. It's an oscillation tuned to the larger symphony of your field. When you stabilize into coherence, your heartbeat becomes a metronome, syncing you with the wider pulse of the universe. You've felt it before in fleeting moments: the rush of standing under a full moon, the stillness after a long exhale, the shiver of recognition when synchronicity brushes your cheek like wind. Those weren't coincidences, they were rehearsals. They were your body showing you what coherence feels like when it floods the flesh. Coherence feels electric, but not frantic. It is a hum, a vibration that begins in the center of your chest and spreads outward. Imagine it like a golden current moving through your veins, charging every cell, until even your fingertips seem to glow. Sometimes it shows up as heat, as though your body is a lantern and someone just lit the wick. Other times it comes as chills, goosebumps racing along your arms as though your DNA is signaling, "Pay attention, we are activating." You may feel tingling in your scalp, a crown opening to the sky, or a pressure behind the eyes like hidden wings pressing outward. Each of these sensations is your biology responding to the collapse of a new timeline into your physical field. Think of it this way: your body is a vessel of superconductors. When coherence surges, resistance drops. Energy that once drained you begins to circulate freely. This is why fatigue suddenly lifts in the middle of inspiration. Why tears fall when you feel truth land in your chest. Why your hands tremble before a breakthrough. The sensations aren't side effects, they are confirmations. Your nervous system is learning to conduct a higher current. And it's not just inside. Notice how the external world responds when you embody coherence. The air feels different, as though it thickens around you. Sounds sharpen, colors saturate, light bends in subtle ways. It's as if reality itself leans in closer, whispering, "Yes, this is the frequency." Even strangers can sense it. They pause, glance twice, or open conversations without knowing why. Animals notice. Children notice. Coherence is visible in ways words can't explain. The forbidden loop made you numb to this. It dulled your sensations, convincing you that tingles, heat, chills, and sudden emotion were just nerves or imagination. But when you reframe them as the language of your DNA, you reclaim your birthright to feel reality reorganizing through you. You no longer dismiss the signals, you amplify them. You learn to ride them like waves. Let's ground this in a practice. Breathe slowly and imagine each inhale pulling timelines into your body like threads of light. See them converging in your lungs, weaving into your bloodstream. On the exhale, imagine your chosen word, the one you sealed in ritual traveling outward, encoded into every photon leaving your skin. With each breath, you are both receiving and broadcasting. The sensation builds until you realize you're not waiting for the field to shift. You are the field shifting. This embodied awareness changes how you move. You walk differently, not because you force confidence, but because gravity itself feels less heavy. You speak differently, words fall slower, rounder, carrying weight. You even rest differently. Sleep becomes a deeper chamber where integration accelerates. People will ask if something is different about you, though they won't know how to name it. The answer is coherence made flesh. Embodiment also means contrast. You'll notice the old patterns in your body too. The slump of shoulders when doubt returns, the shallow breath when fear whispers, the tightness in your gut when scarcity tries to reassert itself. Instead of fighting these sensations, you witness them as residue, echoes of the old loop dissolving. They are not regressions, they are data. Your body is showing you where coherence is still weaving itself in. The urgency here is not mental, it's somatic. The cosmic window is open, yes, but your body is the doorway. If you bypass sensation, you risk collapsing back into orbit. If you embrace it, you collapse the loop for good. That's why embodied practice matters. Walking while imagining light through your veins, speaking your chosen word aloud until your voice trembles, even placing your hand on your chest and feeling your heartbeat as an anchor. These aren't symbolic acts, they're frequency codes. They instruct your nervous system to stabilize in the timeline you've chosen. And here's the beauty. Embodiment is contagious too. When you inhabit your body as coherence, you give others permission to do the same. Your presence becomes an invitation. People will breathe deeper around you without realizing it. They'll speak their truth more easily in your company. Your coherence rewrites the silent contracts of every room you enter. So let your body become the oracle. Let the tingles, chills, heat, and weightlessness be the proof. No algorithm, no external sign can confirm your timeline shift more than your own sensations can. They are the map, the compass, the evidence. And as you lean into them, you realize the forbidden observer loop has no hold on someone who no longer observes from outside, but feels from within. You are no longer watching the shift, you are inhabiting it. You are no longer asking if it's happening, you are feeling it happening. And in that embodiment, reality has no choice but to bow to the frequency coursing through your veins. What you've been sensing as tingles, heat, sudden emotion, and strange timing isn't random at all. It's the sound of your own DNA beginning to sing. Every cell in your body carries within it the quantum potential of countless timelines. Until now, those codes have been dormant, like sealed scrolls waiting for the right resonance to break their wax. But your ritual action, your embodied sensation, your willingness to choose, has created the conditions for the seal to melt. The scrolls are opening. Your DNA is starting to express sequences that have never been active in this lifetime. This is why things feel so intense right now. Systems undergoing phase transition always pass through a period of pressure just before they reorganize into a new state. Water just before boiling vibrates faster than at any other time. A caterpillar's cells dissolve into chaos just before a butterfly emerges. And your consciousness, just before a new timeline stabilizes, experiences a surge of symptoms, vivid dreams, heightened intuition, flashes of clarity, even physical sensations you can't categorize. The pressure isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's proof that the shift is imminent. Think of your DNA as a vast library of frequencies. Only a fraction of the shelves have been lit. The rest sit in darkness, waiting for a signal strong enough to turn the lights on. That signal is coherence. Each time you breathe your chosen word, each time you hold your new identity in your body, a pulse of coherent energy travels through your cells. Receptors on the double helix quiver. Proteins begin to fold differently. Neural pathways rearrange to accommodate new patterns of perception. What feels like inspiration or emotional release is actually the architecture of your body changing to match the architecture of your chosen reality. As this happens, timelines begin to thin. The walls between what was, what is, and what could be soften like ice under Sunday. You might experience memories that don't belong to this lifetime. You might feel déjà vu in places you've never been. You might hear your own inner voice answering questions you haven't asked yet. These aren't hallucinations. They're bleed-through from adjacent timelines your consciousness is phasing into. The forbidden observer loop made these experiences confusing and intermittent. The DNA breakthrough makes them stable. Instead of flashes of other probabilities, you begin to anchor in one. There's also a physical signature to this phase transition. Many people feel it as pressure at the crown of the head, a warmth in the spine, a flutter behind the sternum, or a sudden desire to move differently, slower, more deliberate, as if guided by an invisible rhythm. This is your nervous system recalibrating to handle a higher bandwidth of information. Old patterns may surface briefly, like bubbles rising just before water boils, not to sabotage you, but to be released from your cellular memory, once and for all. This is why patience and gentleness are crucial right now. You're not manifesting harder, you're undergoing biological and energetic reconfiguration. Imagine trying to read a book while the library is being rewired and reshelved. It's messy, but on the other side of the reordering, knowledge that was once scattered becomes accessible. Abilities you thought were fantasy, deeper intuition, faster healing, clearer guidance, emerge as normal capacities of a coherent nervous system. The key during this breakthrough is to remain a stable observer without slipping back into the forbidden loop. Watch the symptoms without panic, but also without detachment. Don't hover above your life like a drone camera. Inhabit it. Eat foods that feel clean and alive. Drink water with intention. Move your body like you're sculpting energy through space. Speak slowly, breathe fully. Every mundane act becomes a ritual when you realize your DNA is listening. As the new timeline locks in, you'll begin to notice external confirmations, not because you're checking for proof, but because proof becomes unavoidable. Conversations will feel scripted by your higher self. Opportunities will line up like constellations. People who once drained you will fade gently from your orbit, replaced by those who resonate with your upgraded field. Even time will shift. Hours will stretch when you're in creation, collapse when you're in alignment, and your sense of waiting will dissolve. This is the culmination of everything you've been feeling. The DNA breakthrough is the event horizon. Beyond it, you're no longer trying to hold a frequency. The frequency holds you. The efforting stops. The loop dissolves. You wake up one morning and realize the patterns that haunted you don't exist anymore. Not because you fought them, but because you phased into a version of reality where they never existed. That's why the pressure feels so heavy right now. You're not breaking down, you're liquefying like a caterpillar inside the chrysalis. The old structures of your identity are melting so the butterfly can form. And once the new structure stabilizes, it will seem sudden to everyone else. They'll say, "You've changed overnight," but you'll know this has been building for lifetimes. So breathe, stay gentle, and keep anchoring your chosen word. Feel the pressure not as threat, but as signal. You are in the final moments before the new timeline collapses fully into your hands. This is the moment where the spiral completes itself, not as an ending, but as the point where a new trajectory begins. Everything you've walked through in these transmissions has been leading you to this truth. The shift you've been sensing, the pressure you've been enduring, the visions you've been glimpsing aren't just about you. They are about what moves through you, what moves as you, what humanity is quietly waiting for you to anchor. You've broken the forbidden observer loop. You've chosen, sealed, embodied, and allowed your DNA to hum with new codes. That hum is not private, it's a broadcast. It carries information through morphic resonance to other nodes in the web of consciousness. Without needing to teach or preach, Your presence becomes a living transmission. This is how the species evolves, not in a single headline event, but in a million subtle collapses where one person after another stabilizes a higher frequency and the whole field rises. Feel into your body right now. The tingles, the warmth, the stillness, they are your confirmation. The field no longer feels like something out there because it's woven into your breath. You've stopped asking if the timeline shift is real and started noticing how reality bends to meet you. That's not arrogance, it's physics. Consciousness collapses waveforms, and yours has become coherent enough to bend probability toward inevitability. From here forward, your life becomes less about seeking and more about signaling, less about looking for signs and more about being the sign. You become the answer to questions you once begged the universe to answer. People will cross your path not because you chased them, but because their higher selves recognize the frequency you hold. Conversations will open that change lives. Environments will shift simply because you stood inside them. Your cosmic mission isn't a job description or a to-do list. It's a frequency to live from. It's the steady radiance of someone who knows the loop has no claim on them anymore. It's the quiet power of a consciousness that no longer waits for confirmation to choose. And as you live from that place, you accelerate the collective phase transition already underway on this planet. Take one last breath with me now. Inhale as if drawing in starlight. Exhale as if releasing centuries of orbit. Let the inhale remind you that you are entangled with everything. Let the exhale remind you that your coherence feeds everything. This isn't metaphor, this is the architecture of reality responding to your stabilized signal. So step forward gently but firmly. Speak slowly. Move intentionally. Live as though your chosen timeline is the only one left, because it is. You are no longer rehearsing. You are transmitting. You are no longer circling probabilities. You are collapsing inevitabilities. And as you do, remember, the observer loop was never truly forbidden. It was a doorway disguised as a cage. You were always meant to notice it, to study it, to outgrow it, and then to walk others through it, simply by living your example. That is your cosmic mission. That is your gift to humanity. You've chosen which reality collapses into your hands this week. Now, hold it, breathe it, and let the world feel your signal. The field has heard you. The shift is already underway.